Matt Eberflus is trying to keep the ship from sinking in Chicago. He says the team is close and they just need to keep the faith. But my question is, close to what? And keep the faith in whom?
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. Join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for even more Bears talk. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We really appreciate everyone who makes Locked On Bears their first listen every single day. Our everydayers are what we love about doing this podcast, and especially those of you in the Locked On Bears Insiders group. We'll have more goodies on that coming up shortly. But first, on the show today, we talk about the response, right? 0-3. We know everything's bad. We know the sky is falling. We feel like the clock is ticking on this current Bears coaching staff and maybe the wider regime, but they still got 14 games left. They got to try and hold things steady and see through to the end of the season and try and get as much as they can out of each and every game from here on out, if for anything, but to save their jobs. And so Matt Eberflus comes out and says, hey, man, Bears, I think we're pretty close. I think we're close. I think this is about to come together, despite, I think, a lot of us feeling evidence to the contrary, but also says, got to keep the faith, got to keep trusting that this is going to work. So we'll hear from Matt Eberflus on that, and, certainly we'll hear him out, but maybe also poke some holes in what we're hearing and not hearing from the head coach when it comes to having faith and trust in this coaching staff without a lot of evidence to necessarily justify it or back it up at this point. And we'll look at, okay, well, where might they be close and why maybe, just maybe, some things will end up in their favor where we'll get some false hope at the very least, or maybe some semblance of a turnaround from here without fully buying back into everything that the Eberflus regime is selling us. Because, of course, when you're 0-3 and you just got embarrassed by the Kansas City Chiefs, no one's going to come out, no head coach is going to come out and say, yeah, we suck. Oh, yep, season's over. We're screwed. Guys, we just got to give up, pack it in, mail it in for next season. Of course, you're going to come out and say the things that you need to say in order to, keep hope and keep, faith and keep mentality going forward and keep people bought into you. I mean, you got to keep your job, let alone also you do want to win football games in addition to keep your job. And those things go hand in hand. But, I don't know. It feels like when you're 0-3 this season and have won, 13 games in a row? And have lost 13 games in a row, the arguments start to fall a little bit more flat and start to feel a little bit more hollow without some kind of real substance behind them. But let's hear what Matt Eberflus has to say and kind of break it down from there.
As the head coach, how do you retain their buy-in? How do you retain their attention when the successes have been so rare?
Yeah, you just got to have belief. You got to have belief in each other. You got to have belief in the coaches, belief in the players, belief in the man sitting next to you, and the work that we put on, every single day, and knowing that we're going to get better, and knowing that history shows you that in the NFL, if you do that, if you're able to have the stamina to push through obstacles and push through adversity, good things are going to happen, and there's countless examples of that in the history of the NFL. Our 2018 Colts team was that way, right? We were 1-5, right? And everybody was looking at us like, not a very good team, right? You just keep doing right over and over again, one play at a time, and then you run off nine in a row or whatever that might be. And, this team is different, but, we'll see where it is. But it's about being a group that's determined, that's focused, right, that has the stamina to push through adversity, but you got to do it together. Because you got to play better complementary football together, offense, defense, kicking. But again, it still comes down to the individual man focusing on his details at his position to making sure he's got those right, and then the position group, then the unit, then the team.
To some extent, the Chicago Bears players don't have much choice other than to keep the faith, and to trust in your coaches and your teammates, because what is your alternate choice? Give up? You're just going to pack it in for the rest of the season? I mean, I guess, you could be injured and go on injured reserve, I guess, but I mean, in lieu of completely leaving the team or something and just not playing at all the rest of the season, if you're going to keep playing and keep trying to earn, your next contract as an individual player, you might as well have faith and trust, because you're not going to be successful if you don't trust your coaching staff, right? I mean, you can't have a successful team if you're not trusting each other and the guys giving you the direction, even if maybe you don't, deep down really fully believe in them. You have no other choice but to roll with it at the very least for the rest of the season. Although I can see where it's hard when, again, you haven't won anything. You won 3 games under this coaching staff. And it's not like, that this offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, for example, he's like a first-time NFL offensive coordinator in this role. Had passing game coordinating stuff with the Green Bay, but first time full-time solo play caller, right? It's not like you have this big track record where you can go, well, he's been such a good offensive coordinator here, here, and here, so we should really trust that he's telling us the right thing. And same with Eberflus as a defensive coordinator. The Colts defenses, I mean, we don't need to spend a bunch of time rehashing those Colts defenses, but there were certainly some ups and downs, and he talked about it. 2018, they started 1-5. They would go on, they didn't win 9 in a row like he had mentioned, but they won, I think it was 9 out of their next 10. There was one loss in the middle there. So yes, he can point to teams he's been a part of have gotten hot before after starting slow. But at least that Eberflus team in 2018, started 1-1. They did get a win early in the season. And of course, that's a very different team with a different coaching staff and a different set of players and a different set of circumstances. And a guy named Andrew Luck under center. That can go a long way when a team's starting 1-5. To have a guy like Andrew Luck also throwing to a wide receiver like T.Y. Hilton while still having guys like Shaq Leonard and others on that defense. Again, not here to compare the Bears and the Colts per se, but just to say just because one team went from 1-5 to 10-6 doesn't mean that he can just pull that out of his hat again and do it again. So it feels very understandable for the team. If I were a player on the team, which I'm not saying anybody specifically is, but if I were a player on the team, to start questioning some of that trust and that faith. Am I really getting good coaching? Should I put all my trust and faith in this coaching staff, these guys, to put me in the best position to be successful? Are my teammates doing everything they can, or am I out here putting my body on the line? Well, I feel like everyone around me is not necessarily doing the same or up to the same standard. Nonetheless, Matt Eberflus still has confidence, still has faith, still thinks this Bears team is close. And I want to kind of get further into close to what? And what might be the signs that maybe they are close to something. We'll take a look at what that might look like next on Locked On Bears. If you take a look at what you look like and maybe aren't super satisfied with your hair, well, our friends at Nutrafol are here to help, because Nutrafol provides a whole body health approach for men that promotes healthier hair with no drugs, no compromises, just better hair. Whether we're talking, on the top of your head or not, Nutrafol is here to help with growth supplements that use physician-formulated, natural science-backed ingredients. The drug-free patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your health. Go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their hair health wellness quiz and identify causes of your thinning hair. Well, then Nutrafol will then personalize your plan for better hair health through whole body wellness. And it works. They've done a clinical study. 84% of men showed improvement in their hair after 6 months taking Nutrafol men's hair growth supplements. Take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter in our promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men. That's spelled Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Nutrafol.com/men. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL. So the Chicago Bears, they need to keep the faith. They need to trust in their coaching staff and their teammates. and come together and believe harder that they're going to win. It feels a little bit Ted Lasso-like, believe, right? Point to the sign, believe. But I don't know, Matt Eberflus doesn't quite feel quite like Ted Lasso, and this team doesn't quite feel like name of the team from Ted Lasso. It's not Wrexham FC. That's the other one, isn't it? Burger, I'm not up on my Ted Lasso, and it's soccer, not American football there. But it's not even a real British team, is it? Anyway, not the point. The point being, like, the Bears feel like they need a little bit more than faith and trust, right? Like, they need better coaching. Like, they need better instruction. They need better scheme. They need better play calling. Like, to me, it feels a little bit like not like excuses, not like, kicking down the blame, but like Matt Eberflus doesn't come out in there and say like, hey, we need to coach them better, right? Or, hey, we need to change what we're play calling. We need to change our schemes. We need to find something different because what we're doing is not working. Instead, the message is what we're doing will work and it's going to work. And we just need to stick with it a little bit harder, a little bit farther, a little bit more, keep focusing and keep doing the things that we're doing because trust us, it hasn't worked for the last 13 games, but it's going to work eventually. It's going to start working soon, right? And the message here is that the Bears are close. Here's how Matt Eberflus describes it.
I do. I think we're real close. I really do. I know a lot of people say we're it's a far way away. I don't believe that. I think we're close. And I think that it's more about the details of the individual person. And if we just keep doing that right things are going to happen.
Why do you think you're close?
What's that?
Why do you think you're close?
Because I know I've seen it before. I've seen it. Like I said, when I was at the Colts, I saw it. When I was, back when I was the DC at Missouri, the first few years we weren't very good, and that was hard. It was hard business. We were, at the Colts we were losing the teams we probably shouldn't have lost to the begin, and same thing when I was back at Missouri. And then all of a sudden, if you just keep doing right, okay, and keep your head down and focus on what matters, okay, good things happen.
I think part of the problem here might just be sort of how Matt Eberflus says it and sort of what he puts the emphasis in how he chooses to respond to some of these very legitimate questions. Like, of course, it's a real question. Like, hey, man, like, why haven't you figured this out yet? The very real scrutiny here that needs some answers as to why is this team not better than it should be. And, well, Matt Eberflus, we've heard Matt Eberflus say we as coaches need to get better. Like, he does say that sometimes, but it's never like the lead point, right? It doesn't end up feeling a lot like accountability. Like, I don't know. I think there probably is more accountability there. I don't think he's certainly not intentionally not blaming the coaches and trying to put it all on the players. Like, he's not, I don't believe him to be doing that intentionally, but the way he answers the questions is all about, okay, we got to focus on the details and the players got to do the little things to get better. And we all got to be more focused and pay more attention and work on the details and we gave all the players individual things for them to improve on. That's one of the things he said. Like, and if each player can have their best game and then each position can have their best game, you'd be surprised how good this team can look if everybody is at their best. And that's all fine and dandy, but like, where's it just feels like he should spend more time taking the blame there. Like, again, he's not he's not absolving himself of blame, but he's also not reminding us of the accountability there, right? It does feel to me like it's a lot of like, yeah, the players need to be more detailed. We need to improve on these little things and these individual things, and the little things add up to the big things. And that might all be true and stuff, but like, where's I need to call better defense. I need to switch up my coverages. I need to adjust our defensive schemes. I need to blitz more, or I need to stunt more, or I need to get different guys in there, or offensively, we need to change up the scheme. Like, we don't get enough or very much of. We get some, but not enough of, the coaches need to be better too. And that's where it becomes a little bit tough to have that faith and that trust and to feel like they're close. Because they're close to what? Like, they're close to their schemes working. They're close to what? Winning games? Because it feels like when you're 41-10 lost to the Chiefs, it doesn't feel very close. When you're 38-20 against the Packers, it doesn't feel like, oh man, if they were just on these three details a little bit more, is the outcome of that game totally different? Even a 10-point loss to the Buccaneers, I mean, maybe that was inflated by a pick six on a screen pass, but still, like, these are double-digit games, right? This is not the team is losing by 3 at the end. I mean, we saw a bunch of one-score games last season. Last season is when it felt like they were close, right? When they lose to the Dolphins 35-32, they were close. When you lose to the Lions 31-30, man, you were close. When you lose to the Falcons 27-24, the team was close last year. And that's kind of the whole point, right? It's like, yeah, they were close last year, and they needed to go from close to actually doing it, to winning, to success. And the fact that you're still at close means at best, you're still where you were last year. But realistically, last year, you were closer. Over these 3 games, you're losing these games by 28 points, 10 points, and 31 points. Last season, you were losing games by 1 point, 3 points, 7 points, right? That doesn't feel closer. Like, of course, we know the team is better this year. The team has more talent this year, but it doesn't feel like they're actually close to more consistent football play. Like, we're seeing a couple of drives a game that look real good, and then the rest of the game is miserable. That's what it felt like against the Packers. That's what it felt like against the Buccaneers. That's what it felt like against the Chiefs. Like, they'll put it together for a drive, and Fields will go 6 for 6 for 70 yards and a touchdown. It's like, whoa, that's the really good Bears team. Where are they the rest of the time, right? It's not like you're good for most of the game and have like a bad moment that makes you close, but no cigar. Like, it just doesn't feel like they're really that close. And I don't know how, it just feels like Eberflus is gaslighting us a little bit when he says they're close. And I get it. Like, they're seeing them be close at practice, and certainly like they know more about football than we do. They're there. The players feel like they're close, and certainly like cleaning up a few details can go a long way. But it just falls a little bit empty when they really haven't looked close, even if they feel close. And it doesn't feel like accountability when you keep telling us, hey, no, trust us, believe us, we're going to figure it out, believe in each other, believe in the coaches, we're going to figure it out, please. Like, again, that doesn't feel like, yeah, we've been bad and we need to be better. Like, it's in there, but it's not really in there. I think what the Bears are actually close to is not all of a sudden becoming a great football team, but they're close to playing really bad opponents. And I think that's going to shape some of the narrative of the season moving forward from this point. And I think I want to make sure we get out ahead of it on the front end, so we're not looking back with hindsight and maybe get fooled or false hope or false confidence, or maybe just not seeing the bigger picture for what it really is. So we'll kind of look at what's next to what the Bears are close to next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Now is the time to snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Literally a $5 bet on anything, and FanDuel is going to add an extra $200 right into your account. So if you want to bet $5 on this week's Bears game, the Bears are 3.5-point home underdogs, 3.5-point home underdogs against the Broncos on Sunday. The money line is Bears plus 140 if you pick the Bears straight up, and the over-under is set at 46 total points. After these two teams each gave up like a combined 111 points last week or whatever it was, maybe an opportunity for this game to go over with two defenses that have been struggling. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, now is the time to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. The Chicago Bears are close to getting their first win of the season. Not because they're going to all of a sudden start playing well, but because they're going to all of a sudden start playing bad football teams. You look at their schedule from here on out. You have the Denver Broncos, who are also 0-3 and just gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins. Certainly the Miami Dolphins are a very good football team, maybe the best team in the NFL. So it's not as though the Bears should expect to come in and be able to put up 70, but the Broncos also lost to a really bad Raiders team in week 1, the only win for the Raiders so far this season. And they also lost to a Washington Commanders team that I don't think is nearly as good as their 2-1 record would suggest. And they got absolutely smoked by the Buffalo Bills last week. Like, the Broncos have lost to some bad teams. The Broncos are very bad. And we're going to talk to Lock On Broncos on our Crossover Thursday podcast this week to find out just how bad. But this is a very winnable game for even this terrible Chicago Bears team. They should, by God help me, beat the Denver Broncos. So you know what I mean? Like, this Broncos team is a mess. And the Bears are also a mess. And whoever can be less of a mess is going to win that game. But that should be a winnable game against the Denver Broncos. Then you're having the Washington Commanders on Thursday Night Football. And yes, they're 2-1, but their offense is ranked 20th in the NFL. Their defense is ranked 27th in the NFL in terms of points, and they're not doing much better in the yardage stats. They've turned the ball over 8 times in 3 games this season. They've been gashed through the ground and in the air defensively. Like, they're, as much as like Sam Howell has shown some things to be encouraged about, he's also made plenty of mistakes and is still a young quarterback growing, and I'm not a huge believer in Washington in general. That's not to say that I think the Bears are going to come in and dominate the Commanders or should be guaranteed to win that game. Heck, the Bears are underdogs to the Broncos. So we just heard from FanDuel, 3.5-point underdogs on FanDuel. So like, this is not a Bears team that should be confident playing any team. But your next 4 games, Broncos, Commanders, Vikings, Raiders. None of those teams are any good. Vikings are also winless. Raiders are 1-2. Their only win against the Denver Broncos. Like we already mentioned, like these are 4 teams on their schedule that are not going to make the playoffs. I mean, maybe by some miracle, the Vikings figure it out. And I guess the Commanders never say never. But like, these are 4 teams that are not Kansas City Chiefs level. These are 4 teams that are not, dare I say, even Tampa Bay Buccaneers level. Although I don't think the Buccaneers are really all that good, as the Eagles helped demonstrate for us on Monday Night Football. But regardless, like, the Bears should win at least one of these next 4 games. Broncos, Commanders, Vikings, Raiders. Maybe even 2 of them. Possibly 3, but I'd be surprised if you get to 3. But if you win 2 of the next 4, you're still 2-5. It is not a good season. But all of a sudden, right, you beat the Denver Broncos on Sunday. And Matt Eberflus can come out and say, see, we kept the faith. We trusted in each other. We believed in our coaching staff. We believed in our players. We cleaned up the details. And see, it works. Like, he's not going to come out and say, I told you so. But a win against the Denver Broncos can serve as sort of a I told you so for the Bears. And he'll say, see, you stick it out and we start to win some games. And maybe they beat the Broncos and Commanders back-to-back. And it's a 2-game winning streak. The Bears have won back-to-back games for the first time in like 3 years. And they're 2-3. They're almost 500. And it's like, whoa, maybe the Bears have figured something out. And it's like, well, did they figure something out? Or did they just play 2 really bad teams back-to-back? Certainly, okay. If you beat all 4, if you beat the Broncos, Commanders, Vikings, and Raiders and win 4 games in a row before you head into Los Angeles to take on the Chargers, we can have a conversation about this team figuring it out and buying into the coaching staff, and the coaching staff being geniuses, and Getsy being a great offensive coordinator again, and Eberflus being a great head coach and defensive coordinator, and all the free agent signings working out and all the draft picks working out. Like, sure, if they do really go on some kind of run here, we can talk about what has changed and what got better and whether or not this coaching staff has earned the faith and earned the trust. But like, at this point, they don't get the benefit of the doubt. Even if you beat a bad Broncos team, like beat 2 of these teams, beat 3 of the bad teams, beat the teams you're supposed to beat, because you were kind of supposed to beat the Packers in week 1, and you certainly had a shot to beat the Buccaneers in week 2. Maybe you were never supposed to beat the Chiefs in week 3, and I think we admitted that from the start of the season. That was never going to be a winnable game. But you got to start beating the teams that you are supposed to beat if your players are going to keep the trust and keep the faith and all that stuff. Because then you get to, again, a Chargers team that I think is just beat the Vikings, I think is a little better than the record suggests. A Saints team that just beat the Packers and have looked like one of the best defenses in football. Right? You got the Lions twice down the stretch in the end of the season. Like, you're going to start to play some real football teams again. And you'll learn pretty quickly that, yeah, okay, if you beat up on a bad Broncos team or something, and then you start playing a real opponent like the Saints, maybe that'll put you back down to earth and we'll be back where we started from, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to get ahead of here, is like, are we going to go on this roller coaster where it's like, okay, Bears are 0-3, the sky is falling. Bears beat the Broncos and the Commanders or whatever, or the Broncos and the Raiders, or maybe it's the Vikings and the Raiders, and the Bears beat a couple teams, and it's like, we're back. And then the Bears get smoked by the Chargers and the Saints, and it's like, this team is terrible. Fire everybody again. Bench Justin Fields again. Oh, but then you beat the Carolina Panthers. Maybe the team's back. Then you get smoked by the Lions again. It's like, fire everybody, bench your coach. But maybe you beat the Vikings again, and you go in the bye week thinking like, oh, maybe they'll figure something out at the end of the season. And then you get smoked by the Lions and the Browns. And it's like, oh, man, fire everybody again and bench everybody again. But then you play the Cardinals. Maybe you could beat, you know what I mean? Why are we going to keep going on this roller coaster? Like, I want to get ahead of that and say they might beat the Broncos this season, but I'm not ready to be fooled by beating a really bad team. Like, let's see actual signs of growth and like multiple wins, maybe, and maybe even multiple wins in a row against maybe a win against a team that's actually decent before we can start to say like, okay, maybe they're going to figure some things out. That's what I kind of want to get ahead of. Like, yeah, that's maybe what the Bears are close to, is things are going to start getting better here because you're no longer playing the Chiefs. The Bears are going to look like a better football team this week. Will it be because they're actually better or just because the opponent is significantly worse? That's what I want to keep an eye on here as we move into our Broncos previews throughout the week here on the Locked On Bears podcast. To make sure that you're ready for that Bears-Broncos game, make sure to subscribe to the Locked On Bears podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers to tune in 5 days a week to get your daily Chicago Bears fix. Special shout out to the Locked On Bears insiders via subtext that get extra in-depth Chicago Bears analysis. We're going to do an all 22 video film breakdown of Matt Eberflus' defense and the coverages and why they're getting gashed by Patrick Mahomes and other quarterbacks to start the season and what they could do differently from a play calling and a scheme standpoint to not make it so easy on opposing quarterbacks. Join subtext.com/LockedOnBears if you want access to that exclusive breakdown. Otherwise, just keep coming back for the free podcast every single day. Nothing's going to change there, and we're always going to be back to make sure you have another opportunity to bear down.